Hello, welcome to Chapter 18 for Business Math called Accounting. This is Lesson 18.3, Manufacturing Costs and Time Study. All right, as always, make sure you're looking through the chapter, read through the section, pay attention to the examples they give you. Don't just look for what do I need to do, but why am I doing it? The more you understand about what you're doing, the easier it will be for you to apply it later in the chapter as we get to more difficult problems and for those kind of fun algebra problems at the end of some of these worksheets. Okay, so again, read through the chapter before jumping into these worksheets. All right, so let's go ahead and read the summary here. So it says the cost of manufacturing an item depends in part on the direct material cost and the direct labor cost. A time study determines the number of units produced in a given time. So then they give us a couple of formulas here. We have prime cost per item, and that equals the direct material cost per item plus the direct labor cost per item. So direct cost and direct labor cost, what that has to do with materials and costs is it's literally the cost that's directly related to this item. So direct material cost is the actual materials used to make this item. Direct labor costs are the actual workers that are there making the item. It's not necessarily like the managers that may be in the vicinity or the payroll department or something along those lines. It's the actual labor that's working, the laborer that's working. And then number of units equals actual time worked divided by average time required per unit. So this kind of helps. I believe we're going to use this on the time study for this one. And so it just helps us kind of give more of an average than individual, depending on kind of what information we're given. All right, so fill in the table below, round to the nearest thousandth of a cent. So thousandth means goes out 3 decimal places. All right, so for this very first piece, we want direct material cost per item. So we have cost per unit and then pieces per unit. So remember, this means that there's 48 pieces for 72 cents. So what I need to do is I want to find out how much each piece costs. I'm going to divide. And so I'm going to do that for each one of these. I'm just going to put a division symbol. These are kind of ugly division symbols, but it works. So we're going to divide, and that's going to give us our direct material cost. So if I have 72 cents and I divide by 48, I'm going to get a pretty small number. 72 cents is already kind of small, and I'm dividing that 48 times. So we're going to have 0.015. And I know I didn't type that in my calculator, but I already have my notes written out here. So I did not do that in my head. I used my calculator when I did it the first time. So you go through and you get your direct material cost per item, which is a little more than 1 cent. It's 1.5 cents. That's what this means. So I have 1 cent, and then if I had another penny and I cut it in half, that's literally what this means. It's how small this is. And then we have the labor cost per hour is $8.50. Items per hour, 340. So direct labor cost per hour is 0.025. So what they went ahead and did this division for you and gave you this column. So they did this piece for you. They're not necessarily going to do that on all of these, but they did that piece for you on this one. And then the prime cost is this first formula they gave us up here. We're going to add our direct material with our labor cost. So we know how much it costs per item. So if I add these two pieces together, they're still very small. So this is 1.5 pennies. This is 2.5 pennies. All right, so if I add them together, I end up with 4 pennies because I have 2 whole pennies and then 2 halves. So 2 halves make another whole, so that gives us a 4th penny. So it cost me 4 cents to make this item. You're going to go through and do that for each one of these. You don't necessarily need to note this division here and the equals part here. I just wanted to kind of note that's how they're getting to that amount. They're doing the division for you there. So let's go ahead and look at one of these word problems here down below. We have General Plastics manufactures plastic picture frames. Each sheet of plastic yields 184 frames. So that's each sheet of plastic yields 184 frames. Each sheet costs $78.40. The direct labor charge is $9.60 per hour, so $9.60 per hour. The machine operator can cut 1 sheet per hour. All right, what is the prime cost of manufacturing? So first I need to know materials. And I know I'm not writing direct material cost per item, but I'm just referencing material here. So I know how many I have, and I know how much it costs per sheet. So remember, we have to do cost divided by number of pieces. I have 78.40, and I'm going to divide that by 184. And it's going to tell me how much it costs per frame, which if I grab my calculator, which I'm just being a little lazy here and writing it from my notes. So I have 0.4261, so it's 42 cents, and then a little more than half a penny there, because it's a sixth of a penny. If you were to cut the penny into 10 pieces, you get to keep 6 of them. Now it's a very small number once we get to that third decimal place. So now we need to know labor. So we have labor costs. So it's $9.60 per hour. So I have my cost, and I'm going to divide that by how many they can make in an hour. Now up here it was different amounts than the pieces per unit, but in this case it says they can cut 1 sheet per hour. Well, I know that 1 sheet of plastic yields 184 frames, so I'm going to use the same number. So in this one, it's a little bit tricky, just because you have to be paying attention to that. So if we divide this, then we end up with 0. What is it? It's a very small number here because we're dividing that quite a bit. 217, for whatever reason, I went out a bunch of decimal places there. So we have our 2 pieces. We have our material and our labor cost. Now all we have to do is add these guys together to get our prime cost of manufacturing 1 frame. So we're going to do the same exact idea on this next one, but pay attention to cost for the materials and the amount you can make from, one either sheet, or in this case, they use sheet again on here because it's a sheet of metal. And then labor costs and how many. So we have each machine operator at the can company stamps labels on sheets of metal that are later made into cans. Each sheet can make 118 cans. Don't know why I said 110. The cost per sheet of the metal is $10.60. So that's per sheet. So I already know I can do materials now. $10.60 divided by 110. The operator is paid $19.40 per hour, and they can stamp 120 sheets per hour. All right, so what is the prime cost of labeling 1 can? Ooh, interesting. I believe there might have been a mistake. I didn't even notice this when I was looking at it earlier. It says 120 sheets per hour. Each sheet can make 118 cans. So if we want to know the prime cost of labeling 1 can, this is a little different. So first, again, we want to do material, and we want to do labor. So we have our 2 pieces we need to do. So this one I kind of already said out loud. We already know we have to divide 1060 by 118. It's 1060 for each sheet. That's the cost. And each sheet can make 118. So I want to divide so I know how much does it cost per can. Labor, so they make $19.40 per hour, and they can stamp 120 sheets per hour. So 120 sheets can make 118 cans. I need to multiply these together to figure out how many cans. And this is actually, I think this is a little bit of a mistake here because the book doesn't do this step, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So this would be a whole lot of cans. I think what they meant to say is 120 cans, because this is how many cans 120 sheets would make. 14,160 cans. So I do believe that is just an error on there because that is not part of the actual answer key. So we're going to pretend like this says cans. Alrighty. So 120 cans. Oops, didn't mean to erase cans here. Use my eraser here to erase that part. Because we want to write our cost first. So his cost is 40 divided by 120 cans. And that will give me his labor cost. And remember, add those two back, and that'll give you your total cost of labeling one can. All right, let's see. Is there another page to this guy? There is. So there's the time study on this one. So let's see. This next one is very, very similar to the other ones, except all you're doing is totaling. You don't have to you don't have to do quite as much on this one as far as the calculating, because on the other ones you had to divide to find all the pieces. They already are showing you this is the cost per item. So to make a staple remover, because it's Charlie Duncan, an industrial engineer, estimates the prime cost of manufacturing a staple remover. Complete the table by calculating the total material and labor costs. So he's already done this for you. This is the cost per item. All you have to do is total it here and here so that you have the total for materials and the total for labor for each one of these. And both of those answers they expect to go here. So it's just two answers on the same line. And then what is the prime cost per staple remover? Well, if we add material and labor together, so we add, and that is our prime labor cost for the second piece. So this one's a little simplified for you because they already did all the calculations. All you have to do is kind of finish it off with the addition. All right, let's look at this time study just so that we know what to do on this one. So Eric Williams prepared a time study to determine the average time required to process passengers through U.S. Customs at the new international airport. So we have opening suitcases, inspecting suitcases, closing suitcases, complete required documents / forms. And then it says number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the observations that he did. He did 5 different observations for each thing. And so what they want to know is the average time. So to do an average, you add all of these guys together. So we're going to add them all together, and that would give us 2.7. And average means I'm going to divide by the number of data points there were, which is 5. So 2.7 divided by 5 gives me 0.54. So on average, it takes 5 seconds. Or 0.5 seconds, sorry. I said that funny. 0.54 seconds, so half a second. To open the suitcase. It's generally pretty quick, right? So we're going to do that for each one. You're going to add across and divide by 5. For each one of these, you're going to add across and divide that by 5, and that'll give you your total here. I know I'm kind of writing this in the answer here, but the answer is actually this amount out here, okay? That's the actual answer they're looking for. And then you want to total this, so make sure you add these, and I'll move this because we're not actually totaling the division here. We're going to total these pieces here, these 4 amounts. We're going to total them to know what is the total amount of time that it takes to get through customs, all right? For opening, inspecting, closing, and then completing the forms. What's the total amount of time, average, that it takes to get through? And then how many passengers can be inspected by one customs officer in 1 hour? So what we're going to do is take this one, we're going to round it up. I know that it seems like a very simple step, but it's just kind of an average. We don't tend to round. It kind of depends on the situation. A lot of the time you don't actually round up for situations like this because it means you're rounding up people. But since we're talking about time, we can round up because it So let's see. I wanted to make sure. Let's see, average time. Oh, see, and now I'm fibbing to you. I was looking at that funny. So if we're looking at 1 hour, we have 60 minutes in an hour. And then we want to take this number and we want to divide by this number, right? Because that tells us we'll know how many people can actually go through the customs at that one point. Just to see that one. So I'm going to do this on I could do it on the calculator on there, and I'm doing it on the calculator on my phone for whatever reason. Yeah. All right. So we just divide 60 by our total time here, and that will give you your answer here for how many passengers can actually be inspected by one customs officer in 1 hour. All right. Well, I hope that helped, and I will see you in section 4. Whoops. Opening the wrong darn screen here.